Well, if you are anything like me, you won't need me to tell you that sometimes life can just be confusing, messy, disordered, chaotic. I remember during that first lockdown, you remember the first lockdown, and children were off school, which meant that parents had to homeschool their children. And it seemed like it went on for months and months and months, if not years and years. Maybe my memory's slightly off there. And what happened was, after a few weeks or so, and a few months of that, on my Facebook feed, all my friends were posting these idyllic, beautiful pictures of what homeschooling during a lockdown was like. You know, the children were being taught about nature in a beautiful garden, and everything was wonderful and idyllic, or they were around the dining room table and everything was pristine and wonderful, and it just looked like never-ending joy as dutiful children were taught everything. Well, as I saw these photos on Facebook on my phone of what was going on in other people's homes, I would lift my eyes up from my phone and survey our living room and just see despair and disaster everywhere. In fact, here's one photo that I took. That's where we used to live in Burgess Hill, and you've got the stairs, the hallway there. That's not just that wasn't just there for like 5 minutes or so. We lived like that for like a month. And I was like, I think I'm going to take a photo of that just so I can remember. I'd love to be able to say that all sorts has changed post-lockdown, but that could be our living room right now, to be honest, if I'm honest with you. At times, life feels like the state of our house at the height of lockdown. It can feel like you're just treading water just to survive. Maybe it feels like you're swimming through treacle non-stop. And I don't think that's just me. I think very often life just feels like that for all of us, if we're honest. Our lives are messy. Our relationships are messy. Even our Christian lives are disordered and fractured, aren't they? Whether it's because of things outside of our control, because of suffering and sickness and bereavement, or whether it's because of our own sinful actions, we can just feel chaotic. Life is relentlessly messy. Why start with that? It's a bit of a downer, isn't it, to start on that? But, well, two reasons to start with that. First of all, because it's important that we're honest, isn't it? That we're honest with one another, that life is a mess, life is chaotic, life is disordered. And if we're not honest in here, in the church, where else are we going to be honest about that? But I start like that also because in this morning's passage, Genesis chapter 1, we receive a beautiful tonic, a soothing balm for those of us who live in these disordered, chaotic lives, which of course is all of us. There's so much to see in this opening chapter of Genesis 1. The preacher or the theologian who reads Genesis chapter 1 is like a child in a toy store. Your eye sees this toy, and then you glance over there and you see another toy, and you run down that aisle, but you catch something out of the corner of your eye and you run to that, and you just don't know what to run to or where to start. There's so much in this chapter that we could look at. We could spend time looking at God's creative power, exploring how the fact that it's through the power of his spoken word that he brings life and creation into existence. We could spend time seeing how creation finds its ultimate fulfillment and rest on the seventh day, as God rests. God rests. And he calls us to rest as well. We could pause and linger on verse 16, where after it says God made the sun and the moon, there's that throwaway line, he also made the stars. That's incredible, isn't it? He also made the stars. All billion and billion and billions of them. We could spend time exploring and squeezing for all it's worth what it means for us to be made in the image of God. And we could trace and draw out all the ethical consequences of that, from conception through to death. There's so much to see here. And we could easily get lost. So I just want to draw to attention two wonderful truths. Two wonderful truths. Two truths that will be that beautiful tonic and soothing balm for all of us in our painful, chaotic lives. So here's the first truth that I want us to see. The first truth that I want us to see is this. Our God is the God who transforms disorder into order. Our God is the God who transforms disorder into order. We see here the creation of the world, the creation of the heavens and the earth and their filling, them being filled. In effect, what we see here in the creation is God taking darkness and making light. God taking emptiness and filling it. God taking disorder and bringing about order. And the account is very carefully written and structured to help us see exactly that. Because first of all, we're told about the state of creation at the beginning. Did you see that in the first two verses? Creation is formless, empty, dark, and there's these deep, chaotic waters. All of these are deliberately chosen descriptions to describe the nothingness, the emptiness, the disorder of everything before God acts. So, for example, water, the deep waters. Water in the Bible, in Bible language, is an image of chaos. You don't know what it's going to do you, water? Where it's going to go, the destruction it might cause. That's a Bible image for chaos, every kind of force against God and his controlling creation. That's why, for example, in the New Testament, when Jesus comes, what does he do? He calms the sea. That's why, for example, at the end of the New Testament, when we get to Revelation and we see a picture of heaven and earth restored, we're told there will be no sea. And we all go, boo! I want to sunbathe and swim in the new creation. And we will. Because the point there isn't that there won't literally be no sea in the new creation. It's that Bible language imagery again that there'll be no more chaos. There'll be no more anything that's opposed to God in the new creation. And so we see here this deep water, this chaos at the beginning of creation. But even the very words chosen are designed to evoke all of this. In Hebrew, at the beginning where it says the earth was formless and empty, the earth was formless and empty. In Hebrew, what this actually says is the earth was tovu vavovu. That's a great little line, isn't it? The earth was tovu vavovu. It deliberately rhymes to try and add this emphasis, this idea that well, it's kind of saying the world was wild and waste, or it was uninhabited and unordered. In a word, there is disorder, there is chaos, there is my living room at the beginning. There is darkness and disorder and chaos, and there's no structure. But where there's disorder, God brings order. Where there is darkness, God brings light. God speaks, "Let there be light." And there was light. What God says happens. Every time God speaks, he accomplishes precisely what he wants. I've said it before, but try giving that a go. Try trying to speak and have your words achieve what you want. I struggle to do that with my dog and our kids, let alone creation. But God speaks and it happens. There's power in his word. But notice how he accomplishes it, and this is significant. He doesn't just speak, he speaks, and through his speech he brings about a separation. Did you notice that as the passage was read? Did you notice that how often the word or the concept of separation was throughout that passage? In many ways, the key idea, the key theme of the whole of Genesis 1 is separation. We see it again. We see it in verse 4, verse 5, verse 9, verse 14, verse 18. God created light and dark, and he separated the darkness from the light. God created a separation between the waters above and the waters below. God created a separation in the waters and brought out land. There's this separating, this ordering of putting things in their rightful place that God achieves. But did you also notice it's more creative, more structured even than that? Because even the very order of the days of creation, God creates these separate spaces, doesn't he? Day 1, day 2, and day 3, God creates spaces. Space of light and dark. The space of the waters above and the waters below, and in the third day, the space of the earth between the waters. But then in days 4, 5, and 6, he takes those spaces he's created and he fills them. So day 1 links with day 4. And day 2 links with day 5, and day 3 links with day 6. He creates space of light and dark in day 1, and he fills it in day 4 with the sun, the moon, and also the stars. And in day 2, he creates the space, doesn't he, of the waters above and the waters below. And in day 5, he fills them with the birds and the fish. And on day 3, he creates the space of the land, and in day 6, he fills it with the animals and ultimately with humanity. There's this filling of the spaces. But that's not even it either, because he fills the spaces, not to an end in and of itself, but he fills them so that they are ruled, so that there is governance, so that there is order in all of those spaces. That's another key theme in Genesis 1. Did you notice how many times the idea of dominion or governance or rule is mentioned? We might see it. You know, why were the sun and the moon made? We're told. Not just for light, but to rule over the sky and seasons. They were given as governors of that. And of course, ultimately, we see that supremely, don't we, when humanity is made, and they are given dominion, rule over the space which they have filled. Do you see? We have moved from disorder, from chaos, from darkness, to complete, beautiful, peaceful, vibrant order, governance, structure. And here's the point. Here's the application. Here's where it's all leading. This same God who through the power of his word took disorder and chaos and transformed it into order will do the same for our lives. What is true of creation will be true of us. So, trust God to bring order into your lives. Trust God to reorder your chaotic life and all that's going in on it. Well, how is he going to do that? Well, he's going to do it exactly through the same way in which he did it in Genesis chapter 1, through the power of his word. The more we allow God to speak his creative, reordering word into our chaotic lives, the more he will transform us. His word, right here, that I'm holding in my hands, the more we allow his word to speak into our lives, he will transform them and bring order. Of course, he's already done that, hasn't he? He's already done that in Jesus. Jesus, who is the Word of God. When Jesus, the Word of God, came into this creation, he came to us, and through his death and through his resurrection, he separated us from darkness, and he brought us into that space of his kingdom of light. And he calls us to rule and have dominion in it alongside him. Our salvation is an outworking of Genesis chapter 1 in many ways. This can be true for us in salvation, but it can also be true for us right now in the midst of the messy lives that we have. Okay, Jesus in his word has not promised us clutter-free, chaos-free living rooms. He doesn't promise us that. He doesn't even promise us chaotic-free lives of suffering and sickness at this moment in time. He doesn't promise that. But he does promise that through the power of his word, he will be at work in our disordered hearts and our chaotic lives to bring about his peace and rule and order, even in the midst of our chaos. And if that is not a soothing balm or a wonderful tonic for weary hearts, then I don't know what is. Jesus will transform our disorder into peaceful order under his rule. That was the first of two truths that I wanted us to see here. Finally, and much quicker, I just want us to see one more final truth here. And it's this. We see here in Genesis 1, God declares the goodness of creation. That's it. It's very simple, isn't it? God declares the goodness of creation. 7 times in the passage, God says, it is good. And then the 7th time, the final time, he says, do you know what? Let's be honest, it's very good. You might be thinking, well, that's obvious, Isaac. Why do we need reminding that creation is good? It's obvious creation is good. Look out the window. It's marvellous. Well, here's the thing. Over the course of Christian history, strangely enough, Christians have struggled to hold on to that truth, that creation is good. We've found subtle ways to undermine it, or push it away, or twist it in some way. For example, we might be tempted to think, down the ages, that yes, God created everything good, but really, it's the whole area of our spiritual lives that are the really good bit. And our physical lives are kind of all right, but what God really cares about is our spiritual lives. We call that the sacred secular divide, don't we? That is to say, the things we do on Sunday, Bible reading and prayer and coming to church, those are really important. But work and business and politics and art and sport and education and music and things like that, well, they're good, I suppose. But God says, no, I have made the heavens and the earth, and everything I have filled them with is good. Every part of our lives is good. Creation is good. God cares about all of our lives. He cares about Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, as well as Sunday. He cares about the breakfast we're having. the painting we're painting, the walk we're going on, just like he cares about our prayer life. He wants all of it for his glory. And he wants us to enjoy it all. The heavens and the earth are good. Creation is good. Yes, it's fallen, and we're going to see that in Genesis chapter 3, aren't we? It's fallen. And we'll consider what that means when we get to it. But it is good. The physical creation is good. And I just want to give one implication of the goodness of creation and why we should hold on to that in this present time in the West. And it's going to be slightly controversial, but you're just going to have to live with that. You can talk to me afterwards if you want to. Because I think one of the current working out of neglecting this truth, that creation is good. Spiritual and physical, creation is good. One of the current working out of neglecting that truth in society, I think, at this moment in time, is the whole movement of transgenderism. That is the belief that our physical bodies don't really matter that much. They aren't really the real us. Or some sense they're inherently bad and wrong and should be changed. That's a controversial issue in society at the moment, isn't it? Especially amongst children. But the message of Genesis chapter 1 is that creation, including our physical creation, our bodies, is good. Very good. Our bodies are a gift of God. They're not something that we should damage or despise or deface in any way. Now, of course, I know there are complex, difficult pastoral concerns to work out there, and I can't pick all those apart and work through them in a very short sermon. Don't hear me say that this is easy or simple, but the point is that Genesis 1 has something profoundly good to say to us when we're in the midst of a society that tells us your body doesn't really matter. Maybe it's another issue for us. Any of us can feel uncomfortable about our bodies and wish that we were different in some way. But God says loud and clear, it is good. It is very good. Remembering the goodness of God's creation is a wonderful balm in a society that does its best at times to make us despise ourselves. Creation is good. Those are two wonderful truths in this passage, I think. Our God is the God who transforms our disorder into order, and our God declares the goodness of his creation. Of course, it's difficult for me to finish without helping us to see how, through the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, we see exactly that worked out. On Jesus' death, on the cross, and his resurrection, his physical resurrection in his body, those were the means through which God chose to bring light into our darkness. He chose to take us into his kingdom. And with his physical resurrection from the dead, Jesus declared once and for all the goodness of God's creation. Let me pray.